guys, welcome. This is the Football Truth Podcast with myself, Taylor Davidson, the founder of Football Entangled. And today I am happy to have on Bernardo Gracindo. He is a footballer at Marist College in the US. It is a Division I soccer program in the NCAA. And he was born and raised in Brazil, but moved to the US later on. And we're looking forward today to just talk about his experiences in football in Brazil and football in the US and the big difference, and how much of what we talk about in Football Entangled is so obvious, hiding in plain sight when you're actually at that level and can see the things right in front of you. Welcome, mate.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, my pleasure, man. I was definitely looking forward to this chat because I think it's really cool to, obviously we work with a lot of European based players, but getting in touch and actually hearing about Division I soccer, how it is playing in that environment, and then especially for you, the differences that you've seen coming from Brazil. But before we go there, why don't you just try and help everyone understand kind of what your background is, where you've come from as a footballer and as an athlete in general, and kind of
Awesome.
yeah.
For sure. So my name is Bernardo. I am currently 22 years old. I was born and raised in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. And that's where, I developed a great passion for football or soccer, as they call it in the US. So football in Brazil is just, it's very much everywhere. So you're exposed to it from a very young age. You're hearing stories or, your uncle's party, everywhere you go, your cousins, like everybody loves soccer. Everybody loves to talk about soccer. Everybody loves to talk about, those that have come before and have laid the foundation for the players that we have now. So we talk a lot about the 50s, the 60s, the 70s. We talk about players like Pelé, we talk about players like Zico, we talk about players like Romario, Ronaldo more recently, Ronaldinho, Rivaldo. So those stories you kind of hear them all once you're 5 6, you already like know it. So it's very interesting. It's very when I came to the US, that was one of the big culture shocks that I had, is that people don't really talk about soccer or football that much. And that was very interesting of me growing up, and that's how I kind of developed that passion. I think those people around me were very passionate when they talked about those players. They were very passionate about talking about the sport itself. So I think I developed a great passion as well. So I've been playing for as long as I can remember, and I was very fortunate as well to grow up in a place where I I could just go outside and I had friends where we could just go and play with. I didn't have to pay anyone to play. I didn't have to go anywhere to play. It was just right there every time. And growing up, you have a lot of free time. You're especially during the summer, and and there's a lot of guys that want to play. Everybody loves playing. So man, woman. So you're just there in the environment playing with everyone. So I was very fortunate to grow up in a place where there was a concrete court, a multi-purpose concrete court, where all the playing was done mostly barefoot, and there's a lot of different ages. So when I was 5 6 7, I was playing with guys that were maybe a little younger for, maybe a little older when they were 10 12. So you kind of mix and match everybody that lives near you, and you go and play together. So that just brings uh, new levels of creativity, I think, to the game, where now you're learning from the guys older and the younger guys you're teaching. So you become the teacher, you become the learner, all at the same time, the teacher and the student. So I think that's very cool of Brazil, is that you're able to just go with your friends and just play. You don't have to have anyone overseeing you, like older parents, a chaperone, or anything. You just go and play, and for hours and hours, where we we lost track of time. We're like doing little 3v3 tournaments, 4v4 tournaments, and everybody's like competing. Everybody wants to win, and I think that was very cool of my childhood that I remember is those 3v3 tournaments where we were playing for like a bottle of like Coca-Cola, or like
Mhm.
a soda or some sort of like snack. We're also like, and then we would like go around and like get a little bit of like coins or money, and just buy everybody that lost, that would buy for the winning team. So I think that was very cool of me growing up. And yeah, so it's very different, I would say, to say the least.
Yeah, I think what you just explained is such an important piece that so many soccer players and footballers from other areas of the world don't quite understand. That is what's called the skate park. Where you have this environment for free, unstructured play. You have a combination of different levels of talent and quality and age that kind of creates this melting pot that that is what produces top talent. It is what allows the cream to rise to the top, because you have to win. If you lose, you're off the court. It's very, very different from in the US or some other, more, I guess I'll call it like westernized countries where, players are all split up into their own age group. Players are all separated. They work on cone drills, trying to isolate certain specific portions of football, of soccer, and it never kind of comes all together, where you really learn the most when like an older player just makes you look stupid, or you get just like manhandled, or you get bodied, or he just does that is where you actually learn the harsh lessons that create on what I think is actual real development in the footballer.
No, for sure. And when those things happen, like you said, you lose your out. As and some days it's like there's maybe 5, 6 teams waiting outside to play, and if you lose, now all of a sudden you're sitting for an hour just watching, or like an hour and a half, and like nobody wants that. You don't want to like come back into the court like feeling cold. You want to keep that feeling warm and like feeling like energetic, and like your mind's just like going, like it's going fast all the time. So
Mhm.
like you really don't want to lose. So you really want to win. So that's
Yeah.
very interesting. And like you said, like you learn a lot from the older players, but you also have to apply that yourself. So you may like see some different things in person, and you're like, wow, look at that. And then you go by yourself, at a time that people are not playing a lot, and you go with your ball, and you try like those things out, and you shoot to the goal, you try those moves, and you just want to get better because you don't want to be that guy that people are screaming at, in the
Mhm.
court. You want to be the guy that people pass the ball to and be like, go score, or go do us, uh, stay on the court. Make sure we stay on the court. So you want to be the guy that's always on the ball, like demanding the ball and like playing, and having that attitude as well. So I think that comes from watching the older players, but also applying it yourself, where you have to really like spend a lot of time just by yourself and like in your own mind and like doing stuff. So
Mhm.
yeah, I think
Yeah, I
that's
think that's the other side of the coin, is where you actually apply those lessons against the younger players, where then you're
right.
actually the guy able to practice things against someone that might not be as athletic or as big or as talented as you, but you can actually practice these things against a live opponent, and you kind of put into practice the lessons that you were taught by the older folks. The other aspect that you mentioned that is so important that people really don't quite understand is this idea of the flow state, and this idea of being in the moment, and how this environment of the skate park really creates that naturally. And it is it is so alien, so opposite of what happens when you are doing cone drills, or you're working with the trainer. your body never really gets into that state where you're doing things effortlessly. One of the things that I'll always kind of harp on is, in a session with a trainer, how many times do you actually smile, like, naturally? Like, do you smile
Right.
from playing from playing football? Oftentimes, you don't smile once because like, you're just doing these exercises robotically. There's no emotional context, there's no emotional intensity, and that's what actually brings out the best performance, because in the flow state is when you can really tap into higher levels of performance. And it is, I mean, the results are obvious because Brazil makes, a large percentage of professional footballers across the world. So it's really not something that people can argue against.
No, not at all. And I think it comes from, the what we're talking about. It's the culture. I think it sets the foundation where everybody kind of like grows up like aspiring to be, a professional soccer player.
Mhm,
And yeah, so to touch on the con drills, I don't know, like it's very interesting to me because I wouldn't necessarily, if I'm doing like all these con drills and all of these things, like I don't think my mind would trust it, like my body to like do certain moves, or to go to like that space where I've only done that against like the cones, and I
mhm,
haven't really done that against a live opponent. Where like I remember like growing up, there were like certain like things that I was very good at because I was doing that all the time, and I knew I could do that against like any opponent, like like dribbling the ball very close to me, and cutting like to this side or to that side. That's because I've done that so many times against so many opponents that I knew I could trust myself to do that in any game or anywhere. And I feel like when you do that with the cones, it doesn't really bring you that uh, the mindset, or like that feeling in your mind where you can like rely on those instincts, or like rely on those abilities, if that
mhm.
makes sense.
Yeah, man, 100%. It's like it's really that instinctual ability that I think, or from what, it's it's pretty obvious, is that these top players are truly built different. And on social media, I'm always harping on that idea of guys being built different. And some people might interpret that as kind of like almost as like a metaphor, and it is, but it's also physical. Like, these guys, literally, their tissue is built different, and these skills and these abilities in football have been molded over so many years on the court, and it is so alien, and so, it's so different from what occurs in, let's say, like a modern academy, or eh, eh, modern academy in the West, in a place where you have to go pay, $1,000 every 6 months for your club team, and you guys do some drills for a few hours. It's so different. Um, the other thing that you touched on earlier is this idea of, like, that winning mentality. I think a lot of people lack that winning mentality at a core level, and especially like in the US and some countries in Europe, players are kind of like they're just used to getting equal opportunity, where in reality, like, you need to earn the right to play, and you need to earn the right to, be a winner. You have to actually go and do the job. You have to win. And when you lose, you can't be like okay with it. Like, you should really not be happy with losing. And especially in my in in a lot of the locker rooms that I was in, there was always some of those players that you noticed when you guys might have lost, or you might have tied a team that you should have beat. The guys, they didn't really feel bad about it. They kind of like had the music on, and they're dancing, and it's like it's a really big cultural shift, I think, nowadays with like social media, especially, where people just don't understand what it means to be a winner. And the, the flip side of that is that when you do win, it feels so much better because you understand what it feels like to lose, and you don't just kind of ignore these things. And I think, like you're saying, in Brazil, in those kind of environments, that winning mentality is really fostered, and it is nurtured because it's developed into their bones almost.
No, for sure. And I think the academy system in Brazil is very very different. The clubs and the youth development, the youth
Mm,
teams. So I was first exposed to that winning mentality, like you're saying. Growing up playing 3v3 tournaments and playing with my friends that near my home. But when once I went to my first youth club when I was 12, that's when I really saw also the other side, and the other players that are very qualified. And so you have the guy that is standing out from your place, and you think that's it, but you have to like go and explore, because there are many guys standing out from many places. So that's when I was first exposed to that. And like you're saying, you have to earn your right at all times. It's not only when you feel like it. It's not only in the game day. It's not only in practice. It's at all times. You have to be very alert and very ready to go at all times. And I really learned that when I first went to my first youth team, because that's where there were guys there. They were fighting for a plate of food at home. So they are fighting to be on that spot. And you really have to fight if you want to be there. And those are guys that were maybe raised differently than you, maybe raised in an environment that wasn't very loving or caring. So now you're having to deal with that at a very young age. And that really like molds your will. I feel your
mm.
want to win and to compete and to earn your spot and to earn your respect. And it's constantly changing. So when you're 12, when you're 13, when you're 14, when you're 15, those things are constantly changing. And I feel that you don't really have to do just enough. At all, many times I felt that way, where I didn't really have to do just enough. I had to go above and beyond. So I really had to be more creative than I think I could be. I really had to be more athletic. I needed to be faster. I needed to have to go and play the ball quicker than I thought I needed to play. And all of that to make a positive impact on not only on the coaches and the club, but also your teammates. And those guys are also fighting there for a plate of food. And and you see their parents come to the game, and you see how serious it is. The football is taken from a very young age. And so I think that really like molds the character of the player.
Yeah, man. There was a while you're talking, I was reminded of kind of this theme that you hear a lot in the West about, only 0.1% of soccer players like make it pro. And they kind of throw around like these stats to to somewhat discourage young players to aspire to be professional, or even just to play in Division 1 soccer. But the reality that I saw on the ground and on the pitch is that this, we'll say 90% of soccer players in the US, they don't work that hard. They're not very hardworking. A lot of people don't really do what's best for them. A lot of people self-sabotage. They make decisions that don't actually lead to better results in their performance. And so that was one thing that I wanted to mention for a lot of for anybody watching, that this idea that like only 0.1% of players make it. Well, a large percentage of those players are not serious players. A large percentage of those players don't do the correct things in their recovery, in their health, in their training. So I think most soccer players should take those kind of arguments with a huge grain of salt, and really focus on what you're made of, because that's really at the end of the day is what's going to get you results. And then like you're talking about in Brazil, especially in some of the areas, I'm sure you can tell me. I'm sure that you can tell me this better than I can. Like sometimes the only way out is football. The only way out of kind of that socio-economic level is football. And otherwise, if they don't make it in football, they might have to um, kind of take a different path in life that might not be, I guess, the best.
Right. No, you're 100% right. So in Brazil, there is, very few opportunities. It's not very equal level. If you're born, in a rich family versus if you're born in a not as privileged family. So um, it's not very equal. So I think that's when you see from a very young age that fire inside, the young kids of really wanting, to make it happen. So
Mhm.
it's you see that fire in the belly, you see the eyes, you can see like from a very young age, and that's happening. And I think there's also like we talk about, it's there is a fire, there is this, but there's also like the talent aspect. There's some guys who are just more talented, and and they can do more, and they can attract more attention, and that way the more leads to better, and the better leads to even better, and the better you are, the better you become, and the better competition you play against, and that's really like sets the tone for the best of the best to come out of Brazil.
Yeah. I mean, there was I think it was a story about um, Richarlison, who now plays for Tottenham, talking about when he was younger and he was going on trials at six or seven or eight different clubs, and he kept getting rejected, and he just kept going because it was literally the only like that was what he was meant to do, and he believed that at such a core level, like his desire to be a professional footballer was just that much more than all the challenges that life threw at him. And I think a lot of players in the US especially are kind of privileged in that way where they're like, okay, if I get a trial at Man City, yeah, I'll go. But if I get a trial at a club in Serbia, like I'm not gonna go. And it's like, well, like you have to earn your spot. I like myself, I mean, I traveled all over Europe after high school. I was in Holland and Sweden and Denmark, Turkey, Greece. I lived in a hostel for over 8 months in Greece, in the downtown Athens, in a huge a metropolis. And so like you have to sacrifice things to get results. And you can't kind of like expect just to walk into an academy in La Liga or in the Premier League and just kind of have that huge like blockbuster transfer. I mean, sure, that'd be nice, but the reality is, like you're saying, there's not a lot of opportunity, so you really have to work on your talent because that's what gets you from where you are to where you want to go.
Right. It's what I was saying, that you have to do more than enough. So
Mhm.
you sacrifice, you're 12, you're getting up at 5 a.m. to get 3 4 buses to go to training that starts at 8, and you come to training, and then like you don't know what you're gonna eat, after, and then you go back home, and all of that, there's like 30 other guys doing the same thing, and those 30 other guys are very talented. They're very good soccer players, and
Mhm.
you're also competing in the weekends against many other clubs, and you want to be seen by the best, and have the best opportunities. So it's you really on top of sacrificing all of that time and all of that effort, you have to develop your talent, and you have to stay focused on your mission and confident in yourself, because there will be times where you're unsure of what the path is leading you, but you have to be confident that you are the captain of your own ship and your own path.
Yeah, man, that is kind of the uh, empowerment that I hope every footballer that gets to watch this understands, and anyone that comes into contact with myself and the Football Entangled brand is just understanding that we're here to empower you and to give you the tools to transform your own life as opposed to me doing it for you. It's really understanding that the potential that everyone has, it's just a matter of unlocking it. And the environments that players like Neymar and Vinicius and Rodrigo grow up in Brazil foster that so much better than the environments that other players grow up in the US and countries that aren't as known for developing talent. But I wanted to kind of dive deeper into this idea of talent because this is one of the main things I talk about where I want to get away from this idea that talent is God given, that talent is like a miracle or talent is just luck, and understand that there's so many factors that are under that are under this umbrella of the word talent. I see talent as a word that people use to describe things that they do not understand very well. Because underneath talent, you have skill, you have technique, you have speed, you have power, you have strength, you have just the ability to be graceful on the pitch, to make it happen, and to get results, and ultimately put the ball in the back of the net. And you can you can tell me this better than I can. There's a reason why top clubs like Barcelona and Real Madrid go into the favelas in Brazil and pay millions for players rather than players from their own academies.
Right. So I can tell that from a personal experience. So I my first 5 years of life, where I
Yeah.
grew up for the first 5 years, I wasn't really outside. I was more inside, where I was in more of a downtown area of Rio, and then I moved. I moved away, and I went, more on the area that wasn't more on the countryside of Rio, and there were like a lot of people outside playing. And when I first saw that environment, I was some, I played soccer well, but compared to other kids at my age, I wasn't as good or as fast or, as athletic or as talented, or my touch, this and that. And I think I developed that from that from that age when I was 5 to 10, and it was just a lot of playing, like all playing that I did was barefoot. So it was only barefoot training, and we talk about that a lot in Brazil in more in a natural way, where we look into like Ronaldinho, we look at like all those players, and we're looking and we're seeing like, oh, all these guys are training barefoot. You want to feel like the touch for the ball, and you want to like understand how you're moving in space, and being barefoot just allows you to do that a little bit more wholesome and consciously in your own body. So we I did that from 5 to 11, 12 a lot, where I was just playing barefoot, and comparing to the same guys that grew up with me from that age. And when I got there, I was just a whole different player. When I was 11, 12, I was just a lot better than them. And that's because I naturally knew that I really wanted this, and I really wanted to work on this, and I was just doing the right things. I was playing against older guys. I was playing more often than them. I was doing training by myself, and all of that, with many different ball sizes. So bigger ball, smaller ball, in the field, and on the concrete court by myself, on the concrete court against younger guys, against older guys, and that just brought me joy. So I think that's a piece where like those clubs go and buy. It's because a lot of those young guys from Brazil, they're growing up outside. They're playing outside all the time with their friends, and they're, like we talked about, they're competing, and they're playing soccer, and they're playing soccer in many different, let's say, spaces and dimensions of the court, and fields and surfaces, and different ball sizes, different small sided games. So you have 5v5s, you have 2v2s, 1v1s, and they're doing that a lot often, and they're mostly doing that barefoot, and they grow up mostly barefoot. So I think that
Mhm.
that's one piece of the puzzle that why those big clubs go and they get the best of the best, and they're usually from Brazil.
Yeah, you just touched on quite a few of some good points. Would you say, or do you think it's fair to say that a lot of these, top talents that come out of Brazil, they weren't like stuck behind a screen playing Xbox all day, and then they go out and have like a cone drills session with the trainer for an hour in the
No,
afternoon?
they're definitely not doing that. They don't have the privilege to have a screen and to have an Xbox, to sit behind, and
Yeah.
they're I don't know how to put it, but I said privilege, but yeah, they're actually privileged in other ways where at the time they may not realize, but
Mhm.
it's just being able to be outside and have all their friends being outside, and they're not by themselves, because I feel like in America it's you may want to be outside, but all your friends are behind a screen playing Xbox. So like, now what
Yeah,
do you do,
really.
right? So it's a whole environmental factor that plays a role in your physical and athletic development. So no, I would say they're they're definitely not behind the screen. They're jumping, they're getting cut, they're they're falling, they're learning how to fall, and
Mhm.
that's what they're doing. They're just like fooling around and going around and doing a bunch of things.
Yeah, yeah, I think, you mentioned a goo a good point there, how in a lot more, like, modernized countries, a lot of aspiring soccer players and footballers, like, their friends are, they're inside playing Xbox or like, they're stuck on their phone, and they don't have that social circle where they're just naturally outside playing football every day, and it's my hope in the future that the Entangled, um, tribe, my private community will one day be a place where you can actually find other footballers in your area that are like-minded, that are serious about football, that want to be outside and develop. You can find your friends, find some real brothers that are going to actually help you get better at football. Because that's one of the big things. If you have friends around you that are actively bringing you down in a way where they're kind of enabling toxic habits and negative self beliefs around development and becoming a top soccer player, that's not going to help you, and and a- any player that doesn't have that extremely natural gift from a young age, you need every positive percentage point in your benefit. Anything taking away from your development counts, because you need everything, like, you need everything that you can get. Um, but yeah, I think what you're saying also, I wanted to touch on. Talk to me a bit more about the weightlifting, the gym, um, culture in Brazil versus what you saw when you came to America and you were playing soccer here.
Right. So the gym. So the people that I grew up in seeing that went to the gym were my mom and friends of my mom, mostly women, and the guys that I grew up around, they weren't going to the gym. So my dad is he's always been active, and he surfed a lot growing up, and he did a lot of triathlon, Ironmans and marathons and half triathlons, half Ironmans, and so he was always outside and moving rather than going to the gym. So I never had that looked up into my dad and seeing that he was going to the gym. I never saw that. I only saw my mom, and yeah, I don't remember seeing like a lot of friends where I grew up around like going to the gym. I think that you would just be, especially at our age, it would just be a waste of time. If you want to get better at football, it wouldn't make sense for you to go to the gym. If you want to get better, if you want your right foot to be better, I don't. it wouldn't make sense to her to go to the gym, and it just doesn't make sense. And also, like, seeing like my mom's friends and the way they moved, I just realized from a young age, that's it's not it. Like, it doesn't really move gracefully, and how an athlete is supposed to move and do and everything. So I was, growing up, I was never a big fan of the gym. None of the people that I grew up with playing were big fans of the gym. They they were just playing, and I think that's a big difference when you come to the US, where now you have a lot of trainers. I think the biggest difference is that in Brazil, the trainers, there's not a lot of trainers. Uh, I don't think I may be wrong, on the numbers, but I was never exposed to a lot of trainers. I don't know if that's more of an economical factor where there's not a lot of people wanting to be a trainer, or what it is. But in the US, there's just a lot of trainers everywhere. So you go to high school, there's like a trainer. You go like to basically anywhere, there's like trainers and people telling you what to do and how to do things. Where in Brazil, you're really relying on yourself and how good you are. Like, you want to be good, so
Yeah.
you don't want to have someone like tell you like how to do this, how to do that, and become the gym kind of becomes a robotic thing. And I also, when I came to the US, I was exposed to the gym. I went to a high school in Miami where I was exposed to the gym, and then I moved to an academy in near Orlando in Central Florida. And that academy, actually, we're not exposed to the gym very often. We're exposed to playing, and we still are. I'm not there anymore, but we're,
Mhm.
the best academy of developing athletes in the U.S. It's Montfort Academy. So we basically, like, we get the best of the best from everywhere. So I had a lot of teammates and people that I knew. They were, from Brazil, from South America, Central America, from Africa. A lot of guys were from Africa, and they were incredibly athletic, and they were never exposed to the gym before coming, and they were just, extremely fast, extremely, you know, driven. They jumped really high, and all of those things without ever like touching a weight. So uh, it's interesting to see how the gym, it's a major factor nowadays in the world of sports. You see, a lot of professional athletes going to the gym a lot, and I don't know if they enjoy going to the gym, or if they feel some sort of need to go to the gym, or if they're being told to go to the gym. Uh, because the guys that I grew up around, I don't think we've ever felt the need, and that our bodies needed the gym to be, stronger or faster, in a sense, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I would, the big question that I think everyone wants to know at home is, was Neymar, was Vinicius, was like Ronaldinho, before they went and trained, like, were they doing like glute band activation for their glutes? Like, were they doing deadlifts and barbell back squat, on the street? Were these guys just like constantly grinding in the gym and perfecting their squat technique? I think the answer is obviously no.
Yeah, no, the answer is no. And I think he also, because when we're talking about, football, soccer, it's like I said, in Brazil, you need to overdo it. You need to stand out more than you think you need to stand out. So it's it's like you really want to be creative. So you really want to work on your, footballing ability and your creativity. And there are many things that go into the game where we learn from that culture of being raised in Brazil, in that environment, where the gym just doesn't bring any of those aspects. Like, when you're running as a kid, like, you're running fast, and you run faster by running fast many times, and by playing
Mhm.
against older guys, and that's how you get faster, and that's how you get better. And it's that I don't think they're not. exposed to gym growing up, and they don't have those facilities around them where they could
Exactly.
be exposed to gym. It's just not around them, So it's like that.
Well,
There's
and
no they're not doing the gym. From my understanding, they haven't done the gym and for for their development from their teenage years and their childhood.
yeah, I mean their whole childhood, that's what makes them who they are. That's what gets them signed to Real Madrid and
Right,
Brazil, and this environment in Brazil and Argentina and a lot of South American countries, like these are the countries making some of the best talent. Same with Africa and obviously Europe, but it's like this is how it's happening in Brazil, and yet places in the US and in Europe, and they're doing the exact opposite. It's like, and then they wonder why they have injuries, and they aren't they wonder why they aren't developing, and they wonder why almost every club, like almost every club in the world, literally, well, not in the world, but like almost every club, let's say for example in Europe, they have Brazilian players,
right. I think
but I
it's
mean there's not as many players from the US, there's not as many players from Canada, there's not as many players from the Middle East, like where this environment doesn't exist. So every footballer should strive to recreate that environment in themselves. And that's especially a lot of the work that we do inside the Way of the Natural. Bernardo has been in the tribe, I think, since last December. Is that right?
yes,
Yeah, yeah. So um, Bernardo can tell you basically how we are recreating all the different pieces that go into making a Neymar, that go into making a Ronaldinho from the ground up. Like these guys are not muscle driven bodybuilder kind of athletes. They are so fluid, they're so dynamic, and that comes from the ability to be fascial driven, to be glute dominant, for the body to move in spirals. And then obviously, like you're saying, always being outside, living a more natural lifestyle. That lends itself to that higher mitochondrial function that most aspiring and professional players in the West are constantly sabotaging with like AirPods and Wi-Fi and Xbox and being on like Twitch and like streaming, and all the toxic processed foods that are not natural. I mean, so many footballers have not actually eaten real food for for a
right,
long time because all they're used to eating is restaurant food or like packaged processed stuff from the grocery store.
right. And I think when you're young, you're able to make like get through this, but
Yeah.
once you get older, then you start seeing the effects.
Mhm.
But yeah, no, I think the way of the natural is it's a must, not only for footballers. I would say I think it teaches you to think. I think that's the big thing. I think it teaches you to be humble and teaches you to see things to different lens. I think that's how I like that's what I got the most, like outside of everything that we've talked about, which is awesome and it's amazing. And you can see improvements from being in there for a very little time. You're constantly seeing improvements. I think that's the best thing. You don't hit a point where like, oh, like now I can't improve anymore, or like, so you're constantly seeing improvements. You're constantly like feeling your body move differently. You're constantly feeling yourself recover differently. And I think it also teaches you to think in a way where now you're seeing the world, you're seeing like stuff around you differently. And I am very grateful to have made the decision to join the way of the natural and join the football entangled world. And I think if for anyone that wants to evolve and has a growth mindset and wants to learn, I think it's a great way to explore their own world and to be their best self, to be, to fulfill their best potential in whatever they
Mhm.
want to do.
Yeah, man. I mean, everything you just said is what I always is what I always just wanted to do. I just wanted to be the best. I just wanted to fulfill my potential and not feel like I've been held back or feel that I have not accomplished the things that I should have because of injuries, because of poor, poor performance, because of um, even just on the field, self sabotage. People don't like. There's a reason players make mistakes. Their focus falters, and they end up not doing the best as they can. And so there's all these things that every footballer should have access to as far as a tool set to accelerate their football career and also basically transform it. Um, One of the last topics I wanted to cover with you is kind of going back to the weightlifting. Is w- what's the big difference that you see in Brazil, where they're making players like Neymar and Vinicius, and they're making multi-million dollar talent, and then what you see in Division One soccer, where they have a where there's a strength coach that maybe has not played soccer before.
Right. So it's hard to talk about it, but it's the
Yeah, of
truth.
course.
Uh, it's that the the environment that you're put in, it's very much, oh, you're Division One athlete, you're expected to do this, this, and that, and it really sometimes sabotages your own self, your own career. So you're expected to work really hard in the gym, you're expected to have the highest numbers, but a lot of times you see the guys with the highest numbers in the gym being slower on the field and being injury prone. So it it's very, to me, sometimes like common sense for people doesn't really go that well. So you're seeing that, I'm seeing it, like guys on the weight room, like they're lifting a lot, they're doing this, like they're like really pushing themselves and like working hard,
Mhm.
just like pushing weights. But and then they go on the field and it's not really that differently. So you have guys that don't lift at all and are outperforming the guys who are lifting like huge amount of weight in the gym, and the guys that spent the whole summer lifting versus guys that spent the whole summer at the beach, the whole summer like not doing anything. And then you put them both together, and now the guy that spent the whole summer lifting, he's sick, he's injured, he's
On the
not
bench,
performing
yeah.
very well. And then you get the guy that spent the whole summer at the beach, he took him a game or two, and the third game he's like, balling. Fourth game even better, fifth game better, sixth game better. So it's, you kind of like see that happening, but it's also very misguided for the players because you have a person of authority telling you what to do, and a
Yeah.
person that is supposed to be there to help you and to help you accomplish things, telling you that you should do this, this, and that. And you follow because now you're a Division 1 athlete, and there's these expectations that you need to follow, and like it's it's hard to talk about, but it's what happens. And most of the guys who are telling you what to do, they haven't played a sport at a high level, and they probably now at their age they are not very able to run very much, and to sprint or like turn direction, and the way they do things, it's very robotic, it's very thought many times. So like if he tells you to go there and like turn and come back, and he goes and like shows you an
Mhm.
explanation, or like gives you a demo, it's very, you can tell that like he thought about like how he was going to turn so many times, and like now he like touched the line and like put his body in a certain way because he's probably like seen that happen in elite athletes. But you just see that it's not natural, it's moving very bulky and very restricted, if that makes
Mhm.
sense.
Yeah. So the opposite of athletic.
Oh yes, not what happens in the field. I mean, in the field, you never know like what movement you're going to do, and it's oftentimes it's dictated by what the other opponent is doing. So you have to be very fluid and ready to do whatever it comes a task.
Yeah, man. I think one of the points that you mentioned there that is so 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 important for every guy just to get in their head right now is ultimately your career, your I mean, your life too is your life. It's your career. So if you give away the responsibility for your health and for your training and for your performance, the guys that you take advice from, when you get hurt or when you know, spend years in the gym, it's you that has to deal with the consequences of poor advice, not the guy that gave you the advice. I always tell people, you're the one that's on the hospital bed getting surgery. It's not it's not the trainer, it's not the physio. That guy goes home after work and he goes to dinner and he is it it's a job. But for you, it's your life. It's pretty important. So it's in your best interest to take control. Not that you have to be disrespectful to people, but you just need to do what's best for you. And you need to educate yourself, get get knowledge, absorb knowledge, try to take in information because I have consults every week with players that have been cut from academies in the Premier League. I have consults with players that used to play at major clubs and now they are free agents and they've had hamstring injury, they've had ankle injuries, they've had stress fractures, they've had even pubic problems. All these things caused by gym work, caused by poor advice. And ultimately, they are the ones paying the consequences because they lost their contract. They lost their spot at a major Premier League academy. They lost their chance to get signed to the first team and make hundreds of thousands and even millions of dollars. So this is not something just to be taking, lighthearted. It's very, very, very important because there are millions of dollars on the line and your future. You want to feel accomplished as a footballer and you want to feel as though yeah, you did the best you can. But you can't feel like that if you get dropped because you've had 5 ankle sprains in the last season and you didn't play very much. And at the end of the day, it's you by yourself on the couch saying, okay, what now? It's
Right.
not the guy, it's not the strength coach.
No,
Obviously,
not at
yeah, yeah.
all.
Well,
Like those.
I was gonna say, obviously, those guys are doing the best that they think, or all those all those guys have the best intentions, but the idea is that maybe it's not the best advice.
No, for sure. I think that they all have the best intentions in mind. It's you versus you, right? I think you're the one who plays the game. You're the one
Mhm.
that has to go 90 minutes, and you're the one that has to do whatever you're supposed to do. If that means tracking a guy, winning a duel, or scoring a goal, like you're the man, that's gonna do that, and nobody else gonna do that for you. But I agree. I think that everybody has the best intentions for you, but oftentimes those guys are not the guys that are on the field, so
Mhm.
they're only inside their own world of being in the gym or in the weight room, and they may have like favorites of each team where like the guys are like doing like all the gym work, and those guys are not usually the favorites of the coach. They're
Yeah,
part
yeah,
with
that's
the
right.
coach. So it's I think everybody has the best intentions, but maybe it's just misguided in a way.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen that so many times where the favorite player of the strength coach that's in the gym maxing out on all the lifts, he's the guy on the bench. And the guy or the guys that the strength coaches don't like, which are usually like the small, skinny South Americans or like Hispanic players, they're the ones that start. They're the ones on scholarship. They're the ones that play and actually win games. So I just hope everyone kind of can understand that distinction and that can kind of take away something valuable from this discussion. It's been a pleasure to have Bernardo on here. I hope everyone can really understand what we're talking about and take this to heart, because ultimately the goal here is to give you the best tools to unlock your potential, and so that you can become the best possible soccer player as you can, and avoid all the pain and struggle that happens to way too many guys out there. But just to wrap up, Bernardo, is there anything that you would like to leave the guys with? Is there any final message?
Just to follow up on what you're saying, I think that the mission of the football entangle is to ultimately give you the power and yourself and be sure that you can accomplish things, that you don't need the best trainer, you don't need to be at the best academy, you don't need like many things to develop your own talent, to develop your own self, to develop your own confidence, to develop your being. So I think that's the biggest thing and the biggest mission of football entangled. It's not to bash on other people. It's not to say that other people are this, other people are that. It's to give you the tools to become your best, self. So I think
Mhm.
that sometimes comes across differently in social media where people are like, oh, but like these people are doing this, these people are doing that. Like we're like you're not trying to like say that these people are, wrong or that this or no. You're just trying to tell you like, hey, there's a different way to do things, and this is what we've found out over years and years of trial and error and research, and I think that's basically what it is, and it really gives you the confidence and power within yourself.
I cannot say it better myself. Thank you so much for that message. If you guys want to learn more about Bernardo, he is a coach inside the Entangled tribe. So that's where you can go if you want to learn more or to get more direct exposure to Bernardo. Um, why don't you let everyone know on where they can follow you on social media?
For sure. So my social media is Gracindo, so Begracindo,
Yeah,
and
and
that's
guys, we'll
on
have that.
Instagram.
Yeah, Instagram. We'll have his username and his link down below in the description. We'll also have the link for the Entangled Tribe down below, so all you guys can learn more. There is currently a free trial, so I'm just hoping to see as many footballers as possible in there, where you can take advantage of the immense amount of knowledge. It's almost like a library full of footballing knowledge that you can use for yourself to transform who you are and get to where you want to be. Um, also, finally, make sure you guys go and watch another play. I think most of the games are streamed, right? For Marist.
Yeah, you're most on ESPN Plus, so everybody wants to follow along.
Yeah,
The
guys.
journey,
Yeah, like watch the journey. Support him in his season. I think so. I think so far his season's going great, and he's playing a lot. So it's going to be a great year for him and for Marist.
for sure, no doubt.
Yeah, yeah. All right, guys. Thanks so much. This is the Football Truth Podcast, episode 3. It was a great one. I'm looking forward to more of these ones. Have a good one. Adios.